Hello, I'm Don Graves, president of the Gila Native Plant Society, and we're going to show some photos here from a hike we took August 26th, and I was with Wendy, my wife, and Jim and Jackie Blurton. We took the LowerMeadowCreek Trail, and if you know the road, that becomes a trail that goes by the old Boy Scout or Scout camp. That's in the general vicinity of where we were. The basket flowers were very, very abundant on this hike. We saw some on our last trip, but I think there were maybe even more, and they were closer to the road. And as you can see with the water in the background, they tend to like it a little bit moist, but they're just spectacular. The hummingbirds really seem to favor these members of the Asteraceae. And you can also see some globe mallow in here, and just a beautiful area. The Cassileia nelsonii, the southern mountain paintbrush. This is the upper elevation paintbrush, and these aren't really petals. They're called floral bracts, and you can see that they're not all orange or red. The base of them is green, and that's one way to tell this from the other 4 or 5 species of Cassileia. But against this fallen log, it makes a very nice photograph. The Fendler's buckbrush was pretty common along here and in flower. The Ceanothus fendleri, if you can look at the leaves have a real strong parallel venation, usually 3 veins, 3 main veins, and that helps it to distinguish it from some of the other Ceanothus species. Commelina dianthifolia. This is the beautiful dayflower, bird-billed dayflower. If you get the right angle on it, it looks like sort of a crane's bill, which I believe is another name for this plant. But that blue is a very very unusual hue of blue, with the red, or rather the bright yellow stigmas and the stamens. So very, very striking, and that was quite common along the trail and the road. One of my favorites is Echinandea flavescens, the crag lily. It's kind of an interesting story here. Crag lily, you say, well, it's in the lily family, Liliaceae, but no, you'd be wrong. And believe it or not, it's in the Agaveaceae family, the agaves. What does it have in common with agave? Well, they're both monocots, so there's one. And I think you'd have to talk to molecular biologists to find out the other similarities. But it's a beautiful little flower, and really kind of special. That sort of apricot color is very distinctive. And there were a lot of them along the trail. This, of course, is Delphinium scopulorum, the Rocky Mountain larkspur. And you notice the long spurs that come back. They're kind of pink, where the blooms are kind of a purpley blue, and sort of a purpley pink spur that comes back. And there were quite a few of these along the trail as well. This is one of my favorites, the Lithospermum macromeria. On our last walk on the upper Meadow Creek area, there was a lot of Lithospermum, but the plants that we saw last time were Lithospermum multiflora, and this giant trumpet, as the common name explains, these are 2 to 3 inches long. These are very, very long. In the Lithospermum multiflora, those little, we call them little trumpets, are only maybe an inch or less long, and there are many of them along the stem. Notice you can see the style, this long style coming out from flowers that have already fallen off, and the stigma would be at the very, very end here, where, of course, the pollen grains would land. But a very striking plant. That was actually the first time I've ever seen this one. The Lithospermum species are in the Boraginaceae family, the borage family. Many, many of these little peas and pea-like flowers in the Fabaceae, the pea family. And I'm not exactly sure. I assume it's one of the Phaseolus species. In our last wildflower hike, we had the Pinos altos string bean, which was another Phaseolus species. So if anybody has an idea here, sometimes when you let those flower, it looks like this one is just beginning to open, and sometimes the color changes and you get a little better look. But that's my best guess. And what a beautiful little morning glory, the scarlet morning glory, Ipomea cristulata. Many of you have morning glories if you live in an area like we do right now that have a lot of another species of Ipomea that is not native, and they can just go crazy. And we try to eradicate those as best we can, but when we see these little special scarlet ones, we leave them and try to let them sow their seeds. But you really be hard pressed to find a more beautiful shade of red. This was an interesting find that Jackie and Jim Blurton found. Actually, they had hiked this trail a week or so before, and this is Ipomopsis aggregata, the skyrockets, which we looked at in our last video. But this one has a very strange growth form, as if the cellular growth was unchecked. Exactly what it is due to, I'm not sure. You see other plants that have these strange morphs that are very unusual, but this one here was pretty striking. So very few of these blue purple penstemons along the trail. They were on the upper, very dry when we were climbing up. And the best I can do when I'm looking at the leaves and I'm looking at the flower is that it Rocky Mountain beard tongue, but I could be wrong. If I had thought about it, I would have taken a look inside the tube and to see if there are any markings that might help me identify it. So once again, if any of you know which penstemon this is, in any event, it's quite beautiful. And of course, the woods rose is very, very common, but the rose hips, in my recollection, aren't always so bright, shiny, as red as they are here. And it's just very striking. And there were quite a few patches of the woods rose, Rosa woodsea. I'm always excited about finding a new member of the Solanaceae, the potato family. And so you have Solanum eleganifolia, I believe it is, in your yard. It's a native, but it's weedy, and you're probably trying to eradicate it as much as we are. But look at the flower here. There's kind of a typical Solanaceae flower with the petals curved back and these bright yellow structures are actually the stamens. And I was talking with a friend, Les Brandt, not long ago about these stamens, and they're formed as a pore with a hole in the end. It's like a tube with a hole in the end, and that's very characteristic of many of the solanums and other members of the Solanaceae. But this is a Fendler wild potato. You can dig down in and get some very, very small of the little tubers. It would take quite a bit to make a meal. But once again, just a beautiful little plant, very close to the ground, and well worth stopping to take a look at. Lots of flowers. These are another aster AC, one of the asters. And then this is our friend Ipomopsis again, with just sort of a contrast of the skyrockets and the asters just kind of caught my eye. So the woods is very, very colorful these days. They had a big rain up there, Meadow Creek area. We could see that just the night before or day earlier where the water had been running down the trail. So it's not as dry as it is here in Silver City. So, and I know I had good reports from a hike that Jeff Boyd did up at Railroad Canyon area, and I suspect that once again they're getting a lot more rain up there. So the fall show of flowers is really well underway, and so don't be fooled by the dryness down here. This is Jackie Blurton and Enothera elata. That's the very common hooker's evening primrose. Generally, it's 2 or 3 feet tall. Now, Jackie is not a short woman, and look at this is over a foot taller than she is, and so she had remembered from the week before and found it again, and we just had to take a picture of it. A lot of times, plants that are growing in the shade tend to get a little taller, but you can see the one off to her right, I guess, is kind of a normal height. But this one, wow, that's a big one. So here's Wendy Graves, Jim and Jackie Blurton under just a big, beautiful gambled oak, Quercus gambellii, and I thought it was a good way to finish the program. Some of these Gamble's oak just get incredibly large, not like the oaks that I know and love back in Illinois and even southern Minnesota, but still regal beauties. Well, thank you, and we'll try to get out and get some more pics. If you have the chance to get out and take a few photographs, please send them to Betty Spence, and she can get them onto our Facebook page. And, don't worry, you don't have to be an Elroy Limmer quality photographer to send. You can see mine aren't always so wonderful, but the idea is let's get out, let's share these areas, let's tell others in the plant society where these things are so we can get out and enjoy them.